For 317 years, the galaxy had been bleeding. The Dominion War had consumed entire star systems, reduced civilizations to ash, and turned the cosmic void into a graveyard of shattered worlds. Billions had died. Entire species had been wiped from existence. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. And at the center of it all stood the Hegemony, an alliance of ancient races whose technology was so advanced that victory seemed impossible for anyone who dared oppose them. The war had started over territory disputes in the Outer Rim, but it had evolved into something far more sinister. The Hegemony didn't just want to conquer, they wanted to reshape the galaxy according to their vision of perfection. Any species that didn't meet their standards was marked for elimination. Any world that couldn't serve their purposes was stripped bare and left to die. Humanity had only discovered faster-than-light travel 40 years ago. They were newcomers to this cosmic nightmare, barely registering as a threat to the ancient powers that ruled the stars. Most galactic civilizations saw humans as primitives, too young and weak to matter in the grand scheme of things. The Hegemony had initially ignored Earth entirely, viewing it as nothing more than a backwater planet populated by an insignificant species. But sometimes, being underestimated is the greatest advantage of all. Captain Elena Vasquez stood in the observation deck of the UES Defiance, watching the distant flashes of light that marked another battle in the ongoing war. Each flash represented thousands of lives lost, entire fleets reduced to space debris in seconds. The Hegemony's latest offensive had crushed the Centauri Defense Coalition in less than a week, adding another fallen civilization to their endless list of conquests. Elena was 34 years old, a career military officer who had risen through the ranks of Earth's newly formed Space Defense Force faster than anyone in the service's brief history. She had dark eyes that missed nothing, black hair that she kept pulled back in a regulation bun, and a reputation for seeing solutions where others saw only problems. Her colleagues respected her tactical mind, but they also knew she had a tendency to take risks that made senior command nervous. The Defiance was humanity's most advanced warship, though by galactic standards it was laughably primitive. The ship measured just over 800 meters in length and carried a crew of 420. Its weapons were based on magnetic acceleration technology and fusion warheads, designs that other spacefaring races had abandoned centuries ago. The ship's armor was made from titanium steel composites that couldn't withstand a single shot from Hegemony energy weapons. Despite these limitations, the Defiance had earned a reputation among Earth's allies as a ship that somehow always found a way to survive impossible situations. Elena had led her crew through 12 major engagements over the past 2 years, and they had yet to lose a single battle. It wasn't because they had superior firepower or better technology. It was because Elena had learned to fight the war differently than everyone else. Standing beside her in the observation deck was Commander Marcus Chen, her executive officer and closest friend. Marcus was a few years older than Elena, with gray streaking his brown hair and laugh lines around his eyes that had deepened during their years serving together. He had been with Elena since her first command, and he understood her tactical thinking better than anyone else in the fleet. "The Altarian Republic fell yesterday," Marcus said quietly, reading from a data tablet in his hands. "The Hegemony's 7th Fleet destroyed their capital world in 6 hours. No survivors reported." Elena nodded grimly. The Altarians had been one of the stronger independent civilizations, with energy shields and plasma weapons that were considered state-of-the-art by most galactic standards. If they couldn't hold out for more than 6 hours against a single Hegemony fleet, what hope did anyone else have? "That makes 15 civilizations this month," Elena said. "At this rate, the Hegemony will control the entire galaxy within 5 years. Unless someone finds a way to stop them," Marcus replied. Elena turned away from the window and walked toward the tactical display that dominated the center of the observation deck. The holographic projection showed the current state of the Galactic War, with red indicators marking Hegemony-controlled territory and blue dots representing the few remaining independent worlds. The red zones covered roughly 60% of known space and were growing larger every day. "Computer, display Hegemony force composition," Elena commanded. The tactical display shifted to show detailed information about the enemy forces. The Hegemony maintained over 2,000 capital ships, each one larger and more powerful than anything humanity had ever built. Their smallest destroyers were 3 times the size of the Defiance, with shields that could absorb direct hits from nuclear weapons and energy cannons that could crack a planet's crust. Their largest dreadnoughts were mobile fortresses capable of sterilizing entire solar systems. But it wasn't just their ships that made the Hegemony so dangerous. It was their technology. They had mastered faster-than-light communication, allowing them to coordinate attacks across thousands of light years instantly. Their weapons operated on principles that human scientists barely understood, manipulating exotic matter and energy fields to create devastating effects. Most terrifying of all, they had developed artificial intelligence systems that could predict enemy movements with uncanny accuracy. "How do you fight an enemy that can see the future?" Marcus asked, echoing the question that kept every military strategist in the galaxy awake at night. Elena studied the display thoughtfully. She had been asking herself the same question for months, ever since Earth's intelligence services had first learned about the Hegemony's predictive capabilities. Traditional military tactics were useless against an enemy that knew what you were going to do before you did it. Every conventional strategy had been tried and failed. Every alliance had been formed and crushed. Every new weapon had been developed and countered. "Maybe the answer isn't to fight them differently," Elena said slowly. "Maybe the answer is to not fight them at all." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "I'm not sure I follow." Elena manipulated the tactical display, zooming in on a section of space near the galactic core. "Look at their deployment patterns. The Hegemony has spread their forces across hundreds of star systems to maintain control over their conquered territories. They're fighting a war of occupation, not a war of annihilation." "That's because they've already won the war of annihilation," Marcus pointed out. "No one has been able to threaten their core territories in over a century." "Exactly," Elena said, a smile beginning to form on her lips. "They've gotten comfortable. They're so confident in their superiority that they've forgotten what it feels like to be vulnerable." Before Marcus could respond, the ship's communication system activated. "Captain Vasquez to the bridge immediately," came the voice of Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell, the ship's communications officer. "Priority 1 message from Fleet Command." Elena and Marcus exchanged glances before heading toward the bridge. Priority 1 messages were reserved for the most urgent situations, usually involving imminent threats or major strategic developments. As they walked through the ship's corridors, Elena noticed that the crew members they passed looked tense and worried. Word of bad news traveled fast aboard a military vessel. The bridge of the Defiance was a compact but efficient space designed around a central command chair surrounded by workstations for navigation, weapons, communications, and engineering. The main view screen dominated the forward wall, currently showing the star field ahead of them. Elena took her position in the command chair while Marcus stood beside her, both of them facing Lieutenant Mitchell at the communications station. Sarah Mitchell was 26 years old and one of the youngest officers to ever serve on a capital ship. She had auburn hair and freckles that made her look even younger than her age, but Elena had learned to trust her judgment implicitly. Sarah had an intuitive understanding of communication protocols and an uncanny ability to extract useful information from seemingly routine transmissions. "What's the message, Lieutenant?" Elena asked. Sarah's fingers moved quickly over her console, bringing up the transmission on the main view screen. Admiral Catherine Morrison appeared, her weathered face showing the strain of leading humanity's war effort for the past 3 years. Morrison was in her 60s, with silver hair and steel-gray eyes that had seen too much death and destruction. She commanded the respect of every officer in the fleet, but Elena could see the exhaustion in her expression. "Captain Vasquez," the Admiral began without preamble, "I'm transmitting new orders effective immediately. You are to proceed to coordinates 77 Alpha 9 and rendezvous with the research vessel Newton. Dr. James Patterson will brief you on a classified project that may represent our last hope of ending this war. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us." Now back to the story. Elena felt her pulse quicken. Dr. Patterson was a legend in the scientific community, a theoretical physicist whose work on exotic matter had led to breakthroughs in faster-than-light travel. If Patterson was involved in a classified military project, it had to be something extraordinary. Your mission parameters are being transmitted separately, Admiral Morrison continued. What I can tell you is that Dr. Patterson believes he has found a way to strike at the heart of the Hegemony's power structure. The details are too sensitive for normal communication channels, but I want you to know that this operation has the full support of Earth's government and our remaining allies. The Admiral paused, and Elena could see something in her expression that she had never seen before. Hope. Captain, we've been fighting a defensive war for 40 years, watching our friends and allies fall one by one. Every conventional strategy has failed. Every alliance has been broken. We're down to less than a dozen independent worlds. And the Hegemony is preparing for their final offensive against Earth itself. Admiral Morrison leaned forward, her eyes boring directly into Elena's through the viewscreen. Dr. Patterson's plan is unprecedented and extremely dangerous. It will require someone willing to take risks that no sane military officer would consider. It will require tactical thinking that goes beyond anything we've attempted before. That's why I'm sending you, Elena. Because if anyone can make this work, it's you. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Elena stared at the blank view screen for several seconds, processing what she had just heard. A plan to strike at the heart of the Hegemony's power structure. A mission that required unprecedented risks. Dr. Patterson's involvement suggested something involving cutting-edge theoretical physics. Plot a course for the rendezvous coordinates. Elena ordered her navigation officer, Lieutenant Commander Alex Rodriguez. Maximum speed. Aye, Captain, Rodriguez replied, his fingers dancing over his console. Course laid in. We'll reach the coordinates in 18 hours at current velocity. Elena settled back into her command chair, her mind already racing with possibilities. What kind of plan could Dr. Patterson have developed that would justify Admiral Morrison's obvious excitement? How could humanity, with its primitive technology and limited resources, possibly threaten the Hegemony's core territories? Marcus, she said quietly, I want you to pull up everything we have on Dr. Patterson's recent research. Also get me detailed files on Hegemony command structure and known locations of their primary facilities. You think Patterson has found a way to target their leadership? Marcus asked. I think Dr. Patterson has found something that scared the hell out of Admiral Morrison, Elena replied. And anything that scares someone who's been fighting this war for 3 years is either very dangerous or very promising. Possibly both. The next 18 hours passed slowly as the Defiance traveled through hyperspace toward the rendezvous coordinates. Elena spent most of the time in her quarters, studying every piece of intelligence they had on Hegemony operations, and trying to imagine what kind of plan could possibly succeed where everything else had failed. Dr. Patterson's research files made for fascinating reading. His work on quantum mechanics and exotic matter manipulation had pushed the boundaries of human understanding, exploring concepts that bordered on science fiction. His most recent papers dealt with something called dimensional resonance theory, which suggested that it might be possible to affect matter in normal space by manipulating corresponding matter in parallel dimensions. Elena was no physicist, but she could see the potential military applications of such technology. If Patterson had found a way to affect Hegemony ships or facilities from a parallel dimension, it could bypass their advanced defenses entirely. The Hegemony shields and armor were designed to stop attacks from normal space, not from alternative realities. When the Defiance dropped out of hyperspace at the rendezvous coordinates, Elena was surprised to see that the research vessel Newton was not alone. 3 other ships waited in the empty space between star systems, each one representing a different species that was still fighting against Hegemony expansion. The largest vessel was the Sovereign, flagship of the Centauri Republic's remaining fleet. The ship was elegant and streamlined, built from materials that gleamed like silver in the starlight. Its captain was Admiral Zara Cole, a Centauri female with blue-tinged skin and large, expressive eyes. Elena had worked with Admiral Cole twice before and respected her tactical abilities, though the Centauri approach to warfare was very different from human methods. The second ship was the Vengeance, a warship belonging to the Korathi Empire. The Korathi were a warrior species with natural armor plating and 4 arms that made them formidable in hand-to-hand combat. Their ships reflected their aggressive nature, bristling with weapons and painted in intimidating patterns of black and red. The Vengeance was commanded by war leader Thok, a massive Karathi male who had never lost a battle in his 40-year military career. The third vessel was smaller and more mysterious. Elena's sensors identified it as belonging to the Ethereal Collective, a species of energy beings who rarely interacted with physical matter directly. The ship appeared to be made from some kind of crystalline material that pulsed with internal light. Elena had never worked with the Ethereals before, but their reputation for advanced technology was legendary throughout the galaxy. "Captain," Lieutenant Mitchell called from her communications station, "I'm receiving a transmission from the Newton. Dr. Patterson is requesting that all ship commanders transfer to his vessel for a classified briefing." Elena nodded and turned to Marcus. "You have the bridge. I want the ship on alert status until I return." "Understood," Marcus replied. "Good luck, Captain." Elena made her way to the Defiance's shuttle bay, where a transport craft was already prepared for the short journey to the Newton. As the shuttle carried her through the vacuum between ships, she couldn't help but feel that she was about to become part of something historic. 4 of the galaxy's remaining free species had sent their best commanders to this remote location for a meeting that could determine the fate of the war. The Newton was a civilian research vessel, much smaller than any of the warships but packed with scientific equipment that represented the cutting edge of human technology. Dr. Patterson met Elena at the airlock personally, which surprised her. Most scientists of his stature left such mundane tasks to their assistants. James Patterson was a tall, thin man in his early 50s with wild gray hair and intense green eyes. He wore a simple lab coat over civilian clothes, and his hands were stained with chemical residue from whatever experiments he had been conducting. Despite his disheveled appearance, Elena could sense an incredible intelligence behind his gaze. "Captain Vasquez," Dr. Patterson said, extending his hand. "I've read your tactical reports. Your victory at the Battle of Proxima Station was particularly impressive." "Thank you, Doctor," Elena replied, shaking his hand. "I'm curious to hear about this plan of yours." Dr. Patterson smiled, but Elena noticed that the expression didn't reach his eyes. "Oh, you'll find it interesting, I'm sure. Follow me to the main laboratory. The others are already waiting." Elena followed Drive, Patterson through the Newton's corridors, which were lined with scientific equipment she couldn't begin to identify. The ship hummed with energy from exotic experiments and theoretical research that pushed the boundaries of known physics. She could smell ozone and metal in the air, along with something else she couldn't quite place. The main laboratory was a large, circular room dominated by a massive holographic projector in the center. Admiral Cole, War Leader Thok, and a shimmering energy form that Elena assumed was the ethereal representative were already present, studying a 3-dimensional display that showed what appeared to be a detailed map of the galactic core. "Captain Vasquez," Admiral Cole said in her melodious voice, "it is good to see you again, though I wish the circumstances were more pleasant." War Leader Thok acknowledged Elena with a grunt and a slight bow of his massive head. The Karathi warrior stood nearly 8 feet tall and was built like a living tank, with natural armor plates covering his entire body. His 4 arms ended in clawed hands that could probably tear through steel, and his face was a study in controlled aggression. The ethereal representative pulsed with brighter light as Elena approached, which she took as a greeting. The ethereals communicated through direct energy transfer rather than spoken language, so Elena wasn't sure how they would participate in the briefing. "Now that we're all here," Dr. Patterson said, "I can explain why I've asked you to risk your ships and crews for this meeting." He manipulated the holographic display, zooming in on a particular region near the galactic center. "What you're looking at is the Nexus, the Hegemony's primary command facility." Elena studied the display carefully. The Nexus was a massive structure built around a dying star, using the star's energy to power systems that coordinated Hegemony operations across the entire galaxy. The facility was protected by energy shields that could withstand the output of a supernova, and it was guarded by the Hegemony's most powerful fleet. Every strategic decision, every troop movement, every technological development originates from the Nexus, Dr. Patterson continued. "It's the brain of the Hegemony war machine. Destroy it, and their entire command structure collapses." War Leader Thok snorted derisively. "The Nexus has been targeted by every major power in the galaxy at some point during this war. The shields cannot be penetrated, and the defensive fleet numbers over 300 capital ships. It would take the combined forces of 50 civilizations to even threaten that facility. Under normal circumstances, yes, Dr. Patterson agreed. But I haven't brought you here to discuss a conventional assault. The physicist manipulated the display again, showing what appeared to be a complex mathematical equation floating in space around the nexus. Elena recognized some of the symbols from her study of his research papers, but the overall meaning was beyond her understanding. For the past 5 years, I've been working on something called dimensional resonance theory, Dr. Patterson explained. The basic principle is that every particle of matter in our universe has corresponding particles in parallel dimensions. By manipulating those corresponding particles, it's theoretically possible to affect matter in our reality. Admiral Cole leaned forward with interest. You're talking about attacking the Nexus from another dimension? Not exactly, Dr. Patterson said. I'm talking about using dimensional resonance to bypass their defenses entirely. The Nexus is protected by shields and armor designed to stop attacks from our reality. But those defenses are useless against forces that operate outside normal space-time. Elena felt a chill run down her spine as she began to understand the implications of what Dr. Patterson was suggesting. You've built a weapon that operates in parallel dimensions? I've built a device that can create a resonance cascade, Dr. Patterson corrected. The weapon, if you want to call it that, is the dying star at the center of the Nexus itself. The room fell silent as the assembled commanders processed this information. Elena stared at the holographic display, trying to wrap her mind around the concept. Dr. Patterson wasn't talking about destroying the Nexus with conventional weapons. He was talking about using the facility's own power source against it. Explain, War Leader Thok demanded. Dr. Patterson touched a control, and the display changed to show a detailed cross-section of the dying star. The Hegemony has been using this star's energy for over 2 centuries, slowly draining its power to fuel their operations. The star is now in an extremely unstable state, held together only by artificial gravity generators that prevent it from collapsing into a black hole. If those gravity generators were disrupted, Admiral Cole said slowly, the star would collapse, and the resulting explosion would destroy everything within 50 light-years, Elena added, including the Nexus and its defensive fleet. Dr. Patterson nodded grimly. The explosion would also destroy any ships that happen to be in the area when it occurs. This is strictly a one-way mission. The ethereal representative pulsed with agitated energy, and Elena suddenly heard a voice inside her head. It was strange and musical, like listening to thoughts made of light. The plan requires someone to deliver the resonance device to the star's core, the ethereal communicated telepathically. The device must be activated manually and cannot be operated by remote control. Whoever undertakes this mission will not survive. Elena looked around the room at her fellow commanders. Each of them commanded ships and crews that represented the last hope of their respective civilizations. The idea of sacrificing any of those forces in a suicide mission was almost unthinkable. There has to be another way, she said. Some method of delivering the device without requiring a manned mission. Dr. Patterson shook his head sadly. The Nexus is protected by artificial intelligence systems that can predict and counter any automated attack. The resonance device requires real-time adjustments based on the star's quantum fluctuations. Only a sentient being can make those adjustments quickly enough to complete the mission. And the Hegemony's predictive capabilities? Admiral Cole asked. How do we prevent them from seeing this attack coming? That's the beauty of dimensional resonance, Dr. Patterson replied. Their prediction systems operate in normal space-time. They can't detect events that originate from parallel dimensions. As far as their sensors are concerned, the attack won't exist until the moment it happens. Elena studied the holographic display for several minutes, her tactical mind analyzing the challenges and possibilities of Dr. Patterson's plan. The mission would require incredible precision, split-second timing, and a level of sacrifice that went beyond anything previously attempted in the war. What kind of ship would be needed for this mission? She asked finally. Something fast and maneuverable, Dr. Patterson said. The resonance device is relatively small, but it requires specialized equipment to operate. The ship would also need to be tough enough to survive the Nexus's defensive systems long enough to reach the star's core. War Leader Thok stepped forward, his massive frame casting a shadow over the holographic display. The Vengeance is the most heavily armored ship here. My vessel could survive the defensive fire longer than any other. But the Korathi ship lacks the speed necessary to penetrate the Nexus's inner defenses, Admiral Cole pointed out. The Sovereign has superior engines and could reach the target faster. The ethereal representative pulsed with contemplative energy before communicating again. Our vessel possesses technology that could phase partially into dimensional space, making it difficult for the Hegemony to target. However, we lack the weapons necessary to fight through their defenses. Elena listened to the debate with growing understanding. Each ship had advantages that would be crucial for different aspects of the mission, but none of them possessed all the qualities necessary for success. The mission would require the combined strengths of multiple vessels working in perfect coordination. "What if we don't choose just one ship?" Elena said suddenly. "What if we approach this as a coordinated assault?" Dr. Patterson raised an eyebrow. "Explain." Elena manipulated the holographic display, highlighting different areas around the Nexus. The Korathi ship serves as a distraction, drawing the attention of the defensive fleet with its heavy weapons and armor. The Centauri vessel uses its speed to penetrate the outer defenses and clear a path. The ethereal ship uses its phasing technology to avoid the heaviest weapons. And a fourth ship carries the resonance device to the star's core. "The Defiance," Admiral Cole said with understanding. "Your ship is small enough to slip through the confusion and fast enough to reach the target." Elena nodded. "Human ships may be primitive by galactic standards, but we've gotten very good at surviving situations we shouldn't survive. The Defiance has proven that it can find a way through impossible defenses." Dr. Patterson studied the tactical scenario Elena had outlined, his brilliant mind analyzing the possibilities and challenges. "It could work," he said slowly. "The coordinated assault would create enough chaos to mask the real attack until it's too late for the Hegemony to respond effectively." "How long would we have?" Elena asked. "Once the resonance device is activated, how much time before the star collapses?" "Approximately 8 minutes," Dr. Patterson replied. "The process cannot be stopped once it begins, and the explosion will be instantaneous once the cascade reaches critical mass." 8 minutes. Elena felt the weight of that number settling in her mind. 8 minutes to deliver the device, activate it, and somehow escape from the most heavily defended facility in the galaxy. It was barely enough time, even under perfect conditions. "There's something else you need to know," Dr. Patterson said quietly. "The dimensional resonance effect will interfere with faster-than-light travel within a 100 light-year radius. Once the device is activated, no ship in the area will be able to escape using hyperspace drives." The implications of this revelation hit Elena like a physical blow. Not only would the mission ship be unable to escape, but the other vessels supporting the assault would also be trapped when the star exploded. They weren't just talking about a suicide mission for one ship. They were talking about sacrificing 4 of the last remaining warships in the galaxy. "How many people are we talking about?" Admiral Cole asked, her melodious voice strained with emotion. Elena did the mental calculation quickly. "Nearly 2,000 crew members across all 4 ships." The room fell silent as each commander contemplated the magnitude of the sacrifice required. 2,000 lives to end a war that had claimed billions. 4 ships to save what remained of galactic civilization. It was a terrible equation, but Elena could see no alternative. War leader Thork was the first to speak. "The Korathi Empire has been fighting this war for 3 centuries. We have lost 12 worlds and 40 billion of our people. If there is a chance to end this suffering, the Vengeance and her crew will take it." The ethereal representative pulsed with somber light. "Our collective has existed for 10,000 years. We have seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations. The Hegemony represents a darkness that threatens to consume all light in the galaxy. We will not allow that to happen." Admiral Cole closed her large eyes for a moment before speaking. "The Centauri Republic is down to its last 3 worlds. Our children ask us why the stars no longer sing with joy. If our sacrifice can give them a future where they can hear that song again, then it is a price worth paying." All eyes turned to Elena. She was the youngest commander in the room and represented the newest spacefaring civilization, but Dr. Patterson's plan ultimately depended on her ship and her crew. The decision was hers to make. Elena thought about the crew of the Defiance. Men and women who had followed her through impossible battles and trusted her to bring them home safely. She thought about Earth, still largely unaware of how close the galaxy was to complete domination by the Hegemony. She thought about Admiral Morrison's words about taking unprecedented risks and thinking beyond conventional tactics. "The Defiance will carry the resonance device," Elena said firmly. "When do we begin?" Dr. Patterson's relief was visible. "The device will be ready for installation within 24 hours. I suggest you use that time to brief your crews and make any final preparations." As the meeting broke up and the commanders prepared to return to their ships, Elena found herself standing alone with Dr. Patterson in the laboratory. The physicist was making notes on a data tablet, but she could see the weight of responsibility in his shoulders. "Doctor," Elena said quietly, "is there really no other way?" Patterson looked up from his tablet, and Elena saw exhaustion and determination in his green eyes. "Captain, I've spent 5 years trying to find any alternative to this plan. I've consulted with the brightest minds from dozens of species. I've explored every possible technological solution. This is the only way to end the war before the Hegemony completes their conquest of the galaxy." Elena nodded slowly. "Then we'd better make sure it works." As she returned to the Defiance, Elena's mind was already shifting into tactical planning mode. She had 24 hours to prepare her crew for a mission that would almost certainly kill them all. She had to brief them on Dr. Patterson's plan without destroying their morale. She had to coordinate with 3 alien commanders whose species had different approaches to warfare and sacrifice. Most importantly, she had to figure out how to navigate the most heavily defended facility in the galaxy, deliver an experimental weapon to the core of an unstable star, and somehow find a way for at least some of her people to survive the impossible. The war that had raged for 3 centuries was about to end in a single battle, and Elena Vasquez would be the one to fight it. The Nexus loomed before them like a metallic god wrapped around a dying star. Captain Elena Vasquez watched through the Defiance's view screen as the massive structure grew larger with each passing second. The facility stretched for thousands of kilometers in every direction, its surface bristling with weapon arrays and shield generators that pulsed with ominous energy. At its heart, the captured star flickered weakly, its light filtered through exotic matter conduits that fed power to the Hegemony's war machine. The dimensional resonance device sat secured in the Defiance's cargo bay, its crystalline components humming with barely contained energy. Dr. Patterson had spent the last 18 hours making final calibrations, while Elena's engineering team installed the specialized equipment needed to operate it. The device was no larger than a refrigerator, but it contained the theoretical power to collapse a star and reshape the balance of galactic power forever. Lieutenant Commander Alex Rodriguez sat at the navigation station, his hands steady on the controls despite the magnitude of what they were about to attempt. Behind him, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, each person focused on their assigned tasks. Elena had told them the truth about the mission during a ship-wide briefing 12 hours ago. Not a single crew member had asked to be transferred to safety. "Approaching the outer perimeter," Rodriguez announced. "Hegemony patrol ships are beginning to take notice." Elena activated the ship's communication system and opened a channel to the other vessels in their makeshift fleet. "This is Defiance to all ships. Execute approach pattern Alpha on my mark." The response came immediately from War Leader Thok aboard the Vengeance. "Corati forces ready for engagement. We will draw their fire as planned." Admiral Cole's voice followed from the Sovereign. "Centauri fleet standing by to clear the path. May the stars guide us all." The ethereal representative's telepathic communication touched Elena's mind like a whisper of light. "Our vessel is prepared to phase between dimensions. The ancestors watch over this moment." Elena took a deep breath and gripped the armrests of her command chair. 317 years of war were about to end in the next hour, one way or another. "All ships, execute Alpha pattern. Begin the assault." The Vengeance broke formation first, its massive bulk accelerating toward the Nexus's defensive perimeter with surprising speed for such a large vessel. Thok had modified his ship's engines for maximum output, sacrificing fuel efficiency for raw power. The Karathi warship's weapon systems came online in a cascade of energy signatures that lit up every sensor in the area. Hegemony patrol ships immediately converged on the Vengeance, their sleek forms darting through space like predatory fish. These were fast attack craft, designed to intercept raiders and probe missions, armed with particle beams and gravity torpedoes. Against most enemies, they would have been more than sufficient. Against a Karathi battleship commanded by a warrior who had never lost a fight, they were merely the opening act. Thok's first salvo destroyed 6 patrol ships in as many seconds. His weapons were crude by hegemony standards, based on magnetic acceleration and explosive warheads rather than exotic energy manipulation. But they were fired with precision and purpose by a crew that understood the value of every shot. The Vengeance carved through the patrol formation like a blade through silk, leaving debris and confusion in its wake. The Nexus's defensive systems reacted exactly as Elena had predicted. Massive weapon arrays swiveled to track the Karathi threat, while shield generators redirected power to reinforce the facility's outer barriers. The Hegemony's artificial intelligence systems identified the Vengeance as the primary threat and began coordinating a response designed to eliminate it as quickly as possible. That was when Admiral Cole made her move. The Sovereign emerged from the shadow of a nearby asteroid, its elegant form accelerating to speeds that seemed impossible for something so large. Centauri engineering had always prioritized grace and efficiency over brute force, and their ships moved through space like living things. The Sovereign's weapons were precise and surgical, targeting specific systems rather than attempting to destroy enemy vessels outright. Cole's tactical approach was the opposite of Thok's aggressive assault. Where the Karathi commander sought to draw attention and absorb punishment, the Centauri admiral slipped through gaps in the defensive formation like water flowing around rocks. Her ship's advanced shields deflected incoming fire, while her weapons systematically disabled the Nexus's outer weapon arrays. The combination of Karathi aggression and Centauri precision created exactly the kind of chaos Elena had hoped for. The Hegemony's defensive systems were designed to counter conventional attacks, but they struggled to respond effectively to 2 completely different tactical approaches being executed simultaneously. Their artificial intelligence began cycling through response protocols, trying to find the optimal strategy for dealing with multiple threat vectors. While the Nexus's attention was focused on the Vengeance and Sovereign, the ethereal vessel simply vanished. One moment it was visible on sensors as a crystalline ship pulsing with internal light, and the next it had phased partially into dimensional space. The Hegemony's targeting systems lost lock immediately, unable to track something that existed only partially in normal reality. Elena watched the tactical display with professional admiration as her allies executed their assigned roles flawlessly. The ethereal ship reappeared inside the Nexus's defensive perimeter, its exotic weapons cutting through shield generators with surgical precision. Each target was chosen to create maximum disruption while avoiding the facility's most heavily defended areas. "Now," Elena said quietly, "take us in, Rodriguez." The Defiance dropped out of formation and accelerated toward the growing battle. Elena's ship was smaller and less impressive than any of the others, but it possessed one crucial advantage. Human vessels had been built by a species that was used to being outgunned and outnumbered. Every system had been designed for survival rather than dominance, with redundancies and backup systems that allowed them to function even under catastrophic damage. As they approached the Nexus's outer defenses, Elena could see the scale of the facility more clearly. The structure was built in concentric rings around the captured star, each layer serving a different function. The outermost ring contained the primary weapon arrays and shield generators. The middle ring housed the command centers and artificial intelligence cores that coordinated hegemony operations across the galaxy. The innermost ring was where the star's energy was harvested and distributed, protected by barriers that could withstand the output of a supernova. Dr. Patterson's voice came through the ship's communication system from his position in the cargo bay. "Captain, the dimensional resonance device is ready for deployment. I'll need to be within 1,000 meters of the star's core to achieve proper synchronization." 1,000 meters. Elena felt a chill as she realized what that meant. The Defiance would have to penetrate not just the Nexus's outer defenses, but fight its way through the facility's most heavily protected areas. They would have to reach the very heart of the Hegemony's power and survive long enough to activate a device that would destroy everything within 50 light-years. "Understood, Doctor," Elena replied. "We'll get you there." The Defiance entered the battle zone just as the Hegemony's main defensive fleet began to arrive. These were not patrol ships or automated defense platforms. These were capital ships of the line, each one larger and more powerful than anything the free civilizations possessed. Their hulls were made from exotic materials that could absorb direct hits from fusion weapons, and their shields operated on principles that human science barely understood. Elena had studied recordings of these ships in action, and she knew that conventional tactics would be useless against them. The Hegemony's vessels were designed to dominate through superior firepower and technology, crushing their opponents with overwhelming force. But Elena had no intention of fighting them conventionally. Engineering. Elena called to her chief engineer, Commander Lisa Park. Transfer all power from non-essential systems to engines and maneuvering thrusters. I want every bit of speed and agility you can give me. Aye, Captain, Park replied. Redirecting power now. We'll have increased performance, but we're sacrificing life support redundancy and weapon power. Do it, Elena ordered. We're not going to win this fight with guns. The Defiance accelerated past the main battle, using the chaos created by her allies to mask her approach toward the Nexus's inner rings. Elena had plotted their course carefully, taking advantage of weapon blind spots and shield gaps that existed only because the facility's defensive systems were focused on the larger threats attacking its perimeter. A Hegemony destroyer moved to intercept them, its massive form dwarfing the human vessel. The enemy ship's weapons, charged with ominous energy as its artificial intelligence calculated firing solutions. Elena waited until the last possible second before ordering evasive maneuvers, sending the Defiance into a spiraling dive that carried it beneath the destroyer's weapon arcs. The Hegemony ship's particle beams carved through empty space where the Defiance had been moments before. By the time the destroyer could adjust its aim, Elena's ship was already past its effective range and accelerating toward the next defensive layer. They're adapting to our approach, Rodriguez called from the navigation station. The artificial intelligence is learning our evasion patterns. Elena nodded grimly. The Hegemony's predictive systems were incredibly sophisticated, capable of analyzing an opponent's tactics and developing countermeasures in real time. The longer the battle continued, the more effective their responses would become. Speed was essential not just for reaching their target, but for staying ahead of the enemy's ability to predict their movements. The Defiance penetrated the Nexus's middle ring through a gap created by the ethereal ship's precision attacks on the shield generators. Elena could see the facility's command centers now, massive structures that coordinated the Hegemony's war effort across hundreds of star systems. Those centers contained the artificial intelligence cores that had predicted and countered every previous attempt to strike at Hegemony power. But those same systems were having trouble predicting the current battle. Dr. Patterson had been correct about the dimensional resonance effect. The presence of his device created quantum interference that disrupted the Hegemony's ability to see into the future. For the first time in centuries, they were fighting without their greatest advantage. A squadron of Hegemony fighters emerged from hidden bays within the command centers, their sleek forms accelerating toward the Defiance with deadly intent. These were not automated drones but piloted craft, flown by Hegemony elites who had never known defeat. Their weapons were precise and their tactics flawless, designed to eliminate threats with surgical efficiency. Elena ordered evasive maneuvers, sending the Defiance through a complex series of turns and rolls that would have been impossible in a gravity well. The human ship's agility served it well here, allowing it to stay ahead of the fighter's targeting systems. But Elena knew they couldn't outrun the pursuit indefinitely. The fighters were faster and more maneuverable, and they knew the terrain better than any human pilot. Doctor, Elena called to Patterson, how much longer until we reach deployment range? We need to penetrate one more defensive layer, Patterson replied. The innermost ring is heavily shielded, but there should be access ports for maintenance. If we can find one, I can deploy the device directly into the star's core. Elena studied the tactical display, looking for any weakness in the Nexus's innermost defenses. The barriers protecting the star were unlike anything she had ever seen, layers of exotic matter and energy fields that could withstand forces that would destroy planets. But every system had vulnerabilities, and Elena had built her career on finding them. There, a small gap in the defensive grid where two shield generators overlapped. The opening was barely large enough for a ship the Defiance's size, and it would only remain open for seconds at a time as the generators cycled through their power phases. It was the kind of opportunity that required perfect timing and a willingness to risk everything on a single moment. Rodriguez, Elena ordered, plot an intercept course for those shield generators. I want to hit that gap when it opens. Captain, Rodriguez said uncertainly, the timing window is less than 3 seconds. If we miss it, we'll collide with the barrier at full speed. Then we don't miss, Elena replied simply. The Defiance accelerated toward the innermost ring while the Hegemony fighters closed in from behind. Elena could see the shield generators cycling through their power phases, creating brief moments where their protective fields didn't quite overlap. The gap would appear in approximately 30 seconds, and they would have exactly 7 seconds to fly through it before the fields realigned. 20 seconds. The fighters were gaining ground, their weapons beginning to find their range. Energy bolts sizzled past the Defiance's hull as the pursuit closed in. 15 seconds. Elena could see the gap beginning to form as the shield generators reached the optimal phase of their cycle. 10 seconds. One of the fighter's shots struck the Defiance's rear deflector, sending power fluctuations through the ship's systems. 5 seconds. The gap was fully formed now, a narrow opening in the seemingly impenetrable barrier. Now! Elena shouted. Rodriguez executed the maneuver with precision that bordered on artistry, sending the Defiance through the gap with meters to spare on either side. The pursuing fighters pulled up at the last second, unable to follow through the rapidly closing opening. The Defiance was through the Nexus's final defensive layer, alone in the space immediately surrounding the captured star. Elena stared at the sight before them with a mixture of awe and horror. The star hung in space like a dying god, its surface roiling with contained fury. Exotic matter conduits stretched from the stellar surface to collection points throughout the inner ring, siphoning away the star's energy to power the Hegemony's war machine. The entire system pulsed with barely contained forces that could incinerate worlds. There, Dr. Patterson called from the cargo bay, pointing toward a maintenance port on one of the larger conduits. That access point leads directly to the star's core. If I can deploy the resonance device there, it will synchronize with the stellar matter and begin the cascade reaction. Elena maneuvered the Defiance toward the access port, while her sensors warned of massive energy signatures building throughout the inner ring. The Hegemony's defensive systems were preparing to fire everything they had at the small human ship that had somehow penetrated their ultimate sanctuary. Doctor, Elena said over the communication system, you'll have maybe 60 seconds to deploy your device before this place becomes uninhabitable. Are you ready? As ready as I'll ever be, Patterson replied. Beginning deployment sequence now. Elena watched through the cargo bay's external cameras as Dr. Patterson's device extended robotic arms toward the maintenance port. The physicist worked with frantic precision, connecting exotic cables and adjusting quantum resonators while energy readings spiked around them. The star's magnetic field was incredibly powerful here, strong enough to disrupt most electronic equipment. Only Patterson's specialized shielding allowed the device to function at all. The first defensive weapons opened fire just as Patterson completed the initial connection. Energy beams designed to cut through capital ship armor struck the Defiance's hull with devastating force. Elena felt the ship shudder under the impact as damage reports flooded in from all sections. Structural integrity down to 60%, Commander Park reported from engineering. We're losing atmospheric pressure on decks 4 and 5. Keep us together for another minute, Elena ordered. That's all we need. But even as she spoke, Elena knew they were asking for the impossible. The Hegemony's weapons were designed to eliminate any threat to their most crucial facility, and they were firing with the concentrated fury of 3 centuries of absolute dominance. The Defiance was tough for a human ship, but it was never meant to withstand this kind of punishment. Dr. Patterson's voice came through the communication system, strained but determined. Dimensional resonance established, beginning quantum synchronization with stellar core. Elena watched the energy readings spike as Patterson's device interfaced with the captured star. The process was unlike anything she had ever seen, exotic particles cascading through dimensions that human science could barely comprehend. The star itself seemed to respond, its surface fluctuations becoming more violent as the resonance effect took hold. More weapons fire struck the Defiance, and this time Elena felt something crucial give way. The ship's artificial gravity failed for several seconds, sending loose objects floating through the air before emergency systems restored normal conditions. Warning alarms filled the bridge as system after system reported critical damage. Hull breaches on multiple decks, Rodriguez called out. We're losing life support in the forward sections. Elena gripped her command chair as another devastating salvo rocked the ship. Through the view screen, she could see more defensive weapons coming online, their targeting systems locked on to the Defiance's position. They had perhaps 30 seconds before the combined firepower overwhelmed their remaining defenses entirely. "Doctor," Elena called urgently, "how much longer?" Patterson's response was barely audible over the sound of sparking electronics and stressed metal. Quantum synchronization at 85%. The cascade reaction will begin automatically once we reach full resonance. Elena made a desperate decision. If the Defiance couldn't survive long enough for Patterson to complete his work, then she would have to buy him time the only way she knew how. She activated the ship's emergency power reserves and diverted everything to the engines. "Rodriguez, take us into the star's corona," Elena ordered. Her navigation officer stared at her in shock. "Captain, the radiation levels will kill us in minutes." "The radiation will also interfere with their targeting systems," Elena replied. "We need to stay alive for 5 more minutes. This is how we do it." The Defiance accelerated toward the captured star, diving into the roiling plasma of its outer atmosphere. The ship's hull temperature spiked immediately as they encountered energies that existed nowhere else in the universe. The Hegemony's weapons continued to fire, but their accuracy decreased dramatically as the stellar radiation interfered with their sensors. Elena felt the ship's systems failing around her as they pushed deeper into the star's corona. The radiation was cooking their electronics despite the shielding, and the hull was beginning to glow with absorbed energy. But Patterson's device continued to work, its exotic shielding protecting it from the hellish environment they had entered. "Quantum synchronization complete," Patterson announced. "Dimensional cascade beginning now. Estimated time to stellar collapse is 8 minutes and 17 seconds. Elena felt a surge of triumph mixed with profound sadness. They had done it. The device was working, and the captured star was beginning its final descent into gravitational collapse. In 8 minutes, the explosion would destroy the Nexus and everything within 50 light-years. The Hegemony's command structure would be eliminated, their war machine decapitated, and the galaxy would finally have a chance for peace. But the Defiance would not survive to see that peace. The ship was dying around them, its hull beginning to buckle under the incredible stresses they had imposed upon it. Elena's crew continued to work at their stations with quiet professionalism, maintaining their posts even as they faced certain death. Elena activated the ship's communication system one final time, broadcasting on all frequencies. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Earth vessel Defiance to all Allied ships. Mission accomplished. Dimensional cascade initiated. Estimated time to stellar collapse is 8 minutes. Get clear of the system immediately." The responses came back quickly, filled with emotion and respect. War Leader Thok's voice was gruff but proud. "It has been an honor to fight beside you, Captain. The Karathi will remember your sacrifice." Admiral Cole's melodious tones carried deep sadness. "The stars will sing of your courage for all time, Elena. Farewell, friend." The ethereal representative's telepathic message touched Elena's mind like a gentle caress. "Your light will shine in the cosmic memory forever. Peace be with you." Elena looked around the bridge at her crew, these brave men and women who had followed her into the heart of enemy space, knowing they would never return home. They deserved to know what their sacrifice had accomplished. "All hands," Elena announced over the ship's internal communication system. "This is the captain. Our mission is complete. The dimensional cascade has begun, and the Hegemony's command structure will be destroyed in approximately 7 minutes. The war that has raged for 3 centuries ends today because of your courage and sacrifice." She paused, searching for words that could express what these people meant to her. "You are the finest crew that has ever served on any ship. You have given your lives so that billions of others might live in freedom. The galaxy will remember what we accomplished here, and children yet unborn will grow up in a universe where hope has meaning because of what you did today." The Defiance shuddered again as more systems failed, but Elena's crew remained at their posts. Through the view screen, she could see the captured star beginning to show signs of instability. Its surface was fluctuating more violently now, and the exotic matter conduits were overloading, as they tried to compensate for the changing stellar dynamics. 6 minutes. The Hegemony's defensive weapons had stopped firing, their artificial intelligence systems finally recognizing that something catastrophic was occurring. Elena could see their ships beginning to evacuate the inner ring, fleeing from a disaster they couldn't understand or prevent. 5 minutes. The star's magnetic field was strengthening exponentially, interfering with every electronic system in the area. The Defiance's engines finally failed completely, leaving them drifting in the stellar corona like a dying ember. 4 minutes. Elena could see massive gravitational distortions beginning to form around the star as its internal structure destabilized. Space itself was beginning to warp under the incredible forces being unleashed by Patterson's dimensional cascade. 3 minutes. The exotic matter conduits exploded in sequence, their destruction sending shockwaves through the Nexus's inner ring. The facility's command centers went dark as their power supplies were severed, leaving the Hegemony's vast war machine suddenly leaderless. 2 minutes. The captured star began to collapse inward, its outer layers falling toward the core with accelerating speed. The gravitational forces were becoming so intense that light itself was being bent around the stellar surface. 1 minute. Elena felt a strange peace settling over her as she watched the final moments of the star's life. The Defiance's life support had failed, but the stellar radiation would kill them long before they suffocated. She thought about Earth, still unaware that its children had just saved the galaxy. She thought about the crew members who had trusted her leadership and followed her into legend. 30 seconds. The star's collapse reached the point of no return, its core compacting into something that would become either a neutron star or a black hole. The release of energy would be beyond imagination, a force that would reshape local space and announce the end of hegemony dominance to the entire galaxy. 15 seconds. Elena closed her eyes and thought about all the children who would grow up in a universe where war was not the constant state of existence. The sacrifice of 2,000 lives to save billions seemed like a fair trade, though she wished they could have found another way. 5 seconds. The stellar core reached critical density, and the dimensional cascade achieved complete resonance. Elena opened her eyes one last time to see the birth of a new star, one that would shine with the light of freedom. The explosion was instantaneous and absolute. The captured star released 3 centuries of pent-up energy in a single moment, creating a nova that could be seen from the other side of the galaxy. The Nexus vanished in a flash of pure light, along with its defensive fleets and the Defiance that had made the ultimate sacrifice possible. The shockwave expanded outward at the speed of light, carrying the news of the Hegemony's defeat to every corner of known space. On distant worlds, beings who had lived their entire lives under the shadow of tyranny looked up at the sky and saw a new star blazing with impossible brightness. They didn't yet know what it meant, but somehow they understood that something fundamental had changed in the universe. The war that had lasted for 3 centuries was over. The Hegemony's command structure was eliminated, their fleets scattered and leaderless. Without the artificial intelligence systems that had coordinated their operations, their vast empire began to fragment within hours. Worlds that had been conquered decades ago rose in rebellion, while hegemony forces found themselves isolated and unable to coordinate effective responses. In the days and weeks that followed, the galaxy slowly learned the story of the 4 ships that had ended the war in a single battle. The names of Elena Vasquez, war leader Thok, Admiral Cole, and the unnamed Ethereal became synonymous with courage and sacrifice. The crews who had given their lives to destroy the Nexus were honored by every free civilization in the galaxy. Dr. Patterson's dimensional resonance technology was studied and eventually led to breakthroughs that transformed galactic civilization. The principles he had discovered allowed for new forms of faster-than-light travel and energy generation that didn't require the enslavement of entire star systems. The galaxy entered a new age of prosperity and cooperation, built on the foundation of sacrifice that had ended the Hegemony's reign of terror. Earth, the youngest member of the galactic community, found itself elevated to a position of honor and respect. The human qualities of adaptability, creativity, and willingness to sacrifice for the greater good became legendary throughout the galaxy. Other species sought to learn from humanity's example, studying their military tactics and philosophical approaches to conflict resolution. The memorial to the Defiance and her crew was built on Earth, but similar monuments appeared on thousands of worlds throughout the galaxy. Each one carried the same inscription, written in the languages of every free species. They gave their lives so that hope might live. They showed us that even the darkest night must end when brave souls kindle the light of dawn. Captain Elena Vasquez had been wrong about one thing. The battle hadn't been about ending a war. It had been about beginning a peace that would last for generations to come. The galaxy had learned that freedom was worth any price, and that courage could overcome any odds when beings were willing to stand together against tyranny. The new star continued to shine in the galactic core, a permanent reminder of the day when 2,000 souls changed the fate of countless billions. Astronomers calculated that it would burn for millions of years, long enough for entire civilizations to rise and fall in its light. Children born under that star would grow up in a universe where war was no longer the constant state of existence, where different species could work together to build something better than what had come before. The Galactic War had lasted for centuries, consuming generations and devastating countless worlds. But in the end, it took only one battle to prove that hope was stronger than despair, that unity could overcome division, and that sometimes the greatest victory required the ultimate sacrifice. Elena Vasquez and her crew had given their lives to save a galaxy. In return, the galaxy would remember their names until the last star burned cold in the cosmic void. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.